are here again. It's Thursday at 5:30 Pacific time, 8:30 Eastern. I'm Evelyn Jerome Alexander with Magellan College Counseling. I am based in Los Angeles personally. Our team is based all over the country, and we work with students all over the country to help them find the college that fits them best, academically, socially, emotionally, and as we like to say, also fits the parents financially. So next week, I'm super excited about this. Melissa Falk, who is the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Muhlenberg College, will be joining me for, I really kind of feel like this is the one everyone has been waiting for. What's changing in college admissions? So Melissa is fabulous. She's been at Muhlenberg for literally 20 plus years, graduated from there. So she is going to tell us what is changing in college admissions, which, as I'm sure you've heard, is everything and nothing. So we'll get some more specific answers from her next week on that. And then so that's June 18th. And then the following week, I will have Casey Rowley, who is the college counselor at Beverly Hills High School. She is fabulous. I have done several presentations with her over the years. Super smart. And literally, she is actually the only college counselor at Beverly Hills High School. You'd think a huge high school like that in a well-resourced district would have more college advice, but Casey is doing a great job carrying the load all by herself. So she will be here on June 25th to give us an overview of the college search and application process. So that is what the next 2 weeks will look like. And I'm really, really honored and thrilled to have with me tonight two fabulous people whose children I have worked with, Charlie and Rebecca Hutchinson. And I will let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their girls' journey. But Charlie and Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me. And I teased your being here a couple weeks ago, and I haven't told everybody where your younger daughter is going. So I have told them that your older one is a rising junior at the University of Wisconsin, but you should share where your younger daughter is going to be.
Yeah, so I'm Rebecca, this is Charlie.
Hey everybody.
We have two daughters. Hallie is the older one that Evelyn just mentioned, who's at Wisconsin. And our younger daughter is Samantha, and she just graduated. She was one of the high school class of 2020 that had that sort of just bummer of a non-graduation. But she is going to UC Berkeley in the fall, and we're super excited about that. She is too, and they both went to a girls' Catholic school here in Los Angeles. And they were there from 6th through 12th grade. Hallie started working with Evelyn in 10th grade, and same with Sam, sort of getting the lay of the land and what to expect and everything in 10th grade. And that's one of, I think, the biggest lessons for us was how much earlier you need to plan for everything than we had anticipated. Of course, you start getting nervous about college when your kids are like in kindergarten. So, you know that it's on the horizon, but actually getting a plan and getting a dose of reality about what you can expect in terms of where your child might attend school, seeing what their courses are, the courses offered at your school are, or their school are, directing them to make sure they get all the different credits they'll need for admission for different places, making sure that their testing, their standardized testing, which I know is obviously changing, but making sure that that standardized testing is that they take those tests at the right time, because It is quite strategic. Those were sort of my big learnings about starting the whole process, was start really earlier than you think.
Right.
The other thing I was going to say is just be sure you're really aware of the college counseling that your particular school offers.
Yep.
We had two college counselors for a class of about 130 girls, and we spoke with some parents of kids who had, who graduated a couple years ahead of our girls.
Yeah.
and you know, knew that there were some shortcomings that we needed to be prepared for. And that was also very, very helpful. But, you know, we have friends who go to schools where they have a very small ratio or whatever that is, you know, when there's a very few students to one college counselor. And then we have friends who have, you know, who go to giant schools where there's just one counselor or two for a class of hundreds.
Yep.
So, and that was kind of our situation, but actually on a much smaller scale, like sometimes it's 500 or 1,000 kids in the class.
Yep.
Very few counselors. And that really affects what kind of attention and advice you're going to get.
Right.
Yep. I mean, people ask me all the time, they sort of assume most of our clients are public school kids because private school kids have counseling. And it's honestly not about the quality of the counselors in private schools. It's about the connection and the one-on-one time that you're going to get, you know, and
right.
Even if the ratio is low, you know, the caseloads at private schools range from 30 students, sometimes 20 students, to 60 or 80 I've seen. And that's a lot of senior, you know, movement. That's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of moving parts in the college application process when they're juniors and when they're seniors. So if you really feel like you want that, you know, ability to call someone and say, hey, we have a question about blah, 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 you know.
Right. The ratio can be really quite low at some schools and high at others.
Yep.
And those are the people that are going to be writing a letter, you know, a letter recommendation for your child. So
Yep.
it is kind of critical.
Well, and that's an argument that even if you do hire an outside counselor, you absolutely must work on building that relationship with your school counselor. It is not something that can be replaced. So that's actually a very good point.
Right, and making sure that you tell you know, that the counselor knows from your child, you know, all the types of things to include in the recommendation. You never assume that they already know, even though most of them will probably.
Yep.
To just, you know, sort of be constantly checking in and, you know, sending emails and making sure that they know which your first choices are and that sort of thing.
This is important because I think most high school students don't think about how important that relationship is, and that it's their job, the student's job, not only to do the schoolwork, but to stay connected with teachers and counselors, because these are all people who play actually a very important role in their college application process.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to let them know as well if you're working with an outside person. It's not, there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Right.
You certainly need to let them know, hey, I'm working with someone else.
Yep.
That'll complement what you're doing, and
yep.
That can assist in the process.
A lot of counselors actually feel relieved when the students tell them they're working with an outside counselor, because they say, oh, great, you know, I can spend a little bit less effort worrying about you because I know someone else is taking care of you.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel like one of the parts of my job is I'm preparing the student to minimize the time that they're spending with their counselor, because knowing that their counselor has a lot of other people to worry about. So if we can be really focused about knowing, you know, I'm going to go talk to my counselor today, and these are the 4 things I'm going to ask her, you're sort of doing the counselor a little bit of a favor by doing that.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, when in their high school career did they start to hear or start to be, you know, talk about college? Because we started talking actually in like 9th grade.
Oh, did we?
I feel like we might have had the first conversation in 9th grade, and then we didn't jump into the 10th.
I think it was late.
Yeah.
But you know, schools are different. Each school is different, and
Sure.
we started rather early just to try to get that process moving along. But it's you know, you don't want to put too much pressure too soon on your child in 9th and 10th grade.
Right.
It did help to get the process going, and really, you know, having an open mind.
Yep. Well, and that's a good point, and I'm glad you said that. So one of the things that I think we dealt with for both girls, and both of you went to pretty highly selective schools. And so I guess my question is, how much do you think you influenced what schools were going to go on their list, and how much do you think they wanted to make you happy by including the schools that you attended on their lists?
Yeah, I mean, that's was kind of a big one too. And that's something that I think, that starts like when your kids are little and you're talking about where you went to school, or you're, getting together with your roommates, or you're watching games, So so there was definitely sort of an expectation instilled early on, that, that those schools were sort of the norm. I went to Amherst College and Charlie went to University of Virginia. And so they're, quite different schools, those two. Amherst is small liberal arts, UVA is larger and has nationally recognized sports teams and all that sort of thing. We knew pretty early on that Hallie, our older daughter, would probably not thrive or want to go to a small liberal arts college.
Yep.
But she really loved UVA, and
Yep.
she went with Charlie to the campus a couple of times. That was definitely her first choice for quite some time. And
But
obviously
that changed over time, and she became
did.
more, of course I don't want to say I was pushing that, but I thought it was a great idea. Some of the state schools do have a legacy program, and I think that's being phased out, and for a good reason.
For many schools.
So eventually, it was easier to kind of recognize that, be more open-minded about what choices would be there. And the reality was, I think it was a long shot for her to get into Virginia anyway.
Right.
So we were more open and kept kind of thinking, there's going to be other opportunities to go to a bigger state school. And Wisconsin was the perfect fit for her.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be a better place for her. And she loves it there.
And we have to give you kudos, Evelyn, because you suggested it. Like
Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Hallie was really interested in sports and kinesiology, exercise science.
Yep.
And UVA had an incredible program, and Evelyn helped us identify the other schools like Delaware and Wisconsin that had great programs. And we felt very strongly, I think this is important to add, that we felt very strongly that we wanted our girls to go away from Southern California for
Yep.
their college experience.
Yep.
And so that's something that we've instilled in them from a young age too. We both grew up on the East Coast.
Yep.
We've lived here for their whole childhood, and it's an unusual place, Southern California. It's pretty amazing, but we also really wanted them to, experience weather and different people and, all that sort of thing. So I got sort of off on a tangent, but I think just back to what you were saying about what you were asking about, if we, if the girls sort of had aspirations of going to the kind of schools that we did,
Yeah.
I would say that yes, they absolutely did. And a lot of that was because of us. But I think a big part of the process is educating yourself as a parent about what else is out there, and that the schools that are the top in U.S. news and all that aren't necessarily going to provide this kind of education for your child.
Yeah, might not be the right fit.
There's a lot. And let me just say, we did a little prep call just so everybody knows, and I made it very, very clear to Charlie and Rebecca that the purpose of my asking them here was not for them to compliment the work that I did with the girls. Of course, I appreciate that, but my goal to bring parents on is I want you as a parent, because I understand who's watching, to know what people who've already gone through the process have experienced and felt as you're doing. So of course I love your family and I appreciate the compliments. So the two things that I want to pull out of what you just said that I think are interesting are, number one, Wisconsin was like not on your radar at all.
Not at all.
Correct.
So it's important to kind of keep an open mind, and like you said,
She loves it.
Yep, and she loves it.
Yeah.
And the second thing, nobody noticed because they don't know her, but you said that she was interested in kinesiology.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So she actually has changed majors and is trying, to moving towards business. And, that's the beauty of it. And I think it's important for parents to keep an open mind that I think a lot of these kids are being pressed, and it's partly from the parents into making some sort of decision about, I want to be a veterinarian, fill in the blank. And I think we have to recognize a lot of these kids don't know what they want to be yet, and it's okay.
Yep.
And that's the
But
benefit.
it makes, I think it makes them a more attractive candidate to show some sort of focus. And I do think Kelly had that focus. She definitely wanted that. And then when she got there and realized the reality, there were some issues too, like the program that she was admitted to, the year that she was admitted, they changed it from being a bachelor's program to being a master's program, the athletic training. So there's an issue there. But that was something that we also knew would be really excellent about going to a larger school, is that, my gosh, who knows what they want to be when they grow up, when they're 17. And the likelihood of her changing was pretty high. So we just wanted to make sure that whatever she chose, if the specialty was really excellent and we were choosing the school because of the specialty, that we also felt very confident about the other offerings there.
Right. Yeah. And so I asked that because I think it's important. And the funny thing is I didn't know she had changed her direction until a couple of days ago when we talked. And she was one of the ones that I thought would never change because she did have that story. She's an athlete and she had injuries. And so she definitely had that, kinesiology story. And it made a lot of sense when she applied. But so many parents are a little bit freaked out that their kids don't have direction or they don't have a passion, and what do I do? And the truth is, even if you do have a passion, even if you do have a story that really matches what you've been doing, you're going to get to college and it could still change because you'll be exposed to all these things that you just didn't notice.
Right. Totally agree.
So talk to me a little bit about the size of both of their lists. I don't remember, we talked about Sam, but I don't remember how many Hallie applied to. I think it was fewer.
Hallie had 16 schools or something.
No, I don't think it was that big, was it? I don't think she didn't apply to 16, but certainly.
Like 3 or 4 of them were UCs. So that was one. So it was really, maybe 12 applications. Right. But 16 actual campuses,
which is pretty. It's that's on the larger side.
Right. I mean, I think in retrospect we probably over applied, and that was
definitely
definitely over applied,
especially with Sam, because Sam applied to kind of an embarrassing number. I'm too embarrassed to say.
And that's the challenge. You don't know what it really is a little bit of a crapshoot about where your kid's going to get in and the randomness of it. So you do feel like you have to put more applications in, but certainly I think lesson I learned is we probably applied to too many schools. Well,
and some are random, the ones with an 11% acceptance rate and a 22% acceptance rate are kind of random. And P.S., she got admitted to a couple of those, but there was every chance that could have not happened that way. But I will say that part of the reason the list was long is that I was very pushy to make sure that there were a few that I was 100% sure she would be admitted to.
Yeah.
So.
And that definitely was a confidence booster to get admitted to some places early on, because they did let her know prior to the date that they said they would, that she was admitted. So that. And that's made her feel great.
I think that's an important fact that you said, Evelyn, which I recommend everybody do. Find a school or two that does rolling admission. Yeah. Is going to alert them early. Yeah. Standard date, I believe, is April 1st. I think, is that right? For most schools, but is that correct?
That's the late.
That's the late side. But my point is there are some schools that will let you know in January and February.
December.
Or even December without having to be binding.
That's
and
right.
It's a great confidence booster to find a couple of schools that that are high likelihood that your child will get into. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, you can kind of check the box and say, well, this kid's going to college.
Exactly.
No matter what happens.
Exactly. I would say the day that the first acceptance letter comes, you didn't even know that you were holding your breath for 6 months.
Yeah.
But everyone actually exhaled. And this, again, we're grown-ups. We've dealt with rejection in our lives and we're confident in the direction our lives are going. These guys are 17, 18 years old. This is really stressful, and they're actually not sure they're going to college until a college says to them, we'd love to have you, you should come here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's also recognizing that there's a place for every kid. You know, this isn't, I think as parents, we've tried to create, trying to create these superstar athletes or superstar students. And, there's so many different choices out there that, you don't have to be a superstar athlete or a superstar student to find the right place. There are a lot of great schools out there.
Well, to me, there's sort of two pieces of the equation. You're right. You have to find the right place, and at the same time, you have to figure out who you are and who the authentic you is. P.S. Can I remind you, they're 17, and give the colleges that in an essay, which is really hard.
Right.
I just spent the last hour brainstorming with the next rising senior class, and this essay stuff is really hard, but colleges are looking for the story that you tell. And honestly, both Sam and Hallie did really great essay work and really introspected about what stories they wanted to tell, and that's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I would say, to throw the compliment back at you, I think you guys were very good at being pretty hands off, and you seem to resist the temptation to pop into their Google Docs and rewrite everything, which a lot of parents really kind of want to do.
Yeah, I think that
was hard to not.
She's the editor. So, but I think that was really, it was nice to do, because in the end, it really felt like their work.
Exactly.
And really, we were really proud of what they'd done, and it was not something that, and you obviously worked with her, but it was, with them, but it's hard to let go and just say, this is your baby.
Well, and is it hard to let go because deep down inside, you are judging your parenting by the results that they get?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Exactly. And, we all think there's some essay that has to be written in order to get this admission to some school. And quite frankly, it's not that simple, It's
not that simple.
Right.
And so that brings us back to the other side of the equation, which is finding the right fit, finding the colleges where you can turn into the person that you are meant to be. And that's why I love that Hallie's changed her major, because the person she was meant to be may or may not have something to do with kinesiology, even though 3 years ago we were convinced it did.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can totally see her.
One thing I actually just thought of that we haven't talked about for a while, but when on one of the visits that Hallie did to UVA, like it was probably junior year. Oh yeah, it was definitely junior year, because I took her to a few colleges on the East Coast, and because of Charlie's, because Charlie's an alumni, and because we have a friend who is like on the alumni board or something like that, Hallie got an interview with like an alumni admissions person.
Dean or someone, a junior person though, I think, a junior person in the admissions office, right?
Yeah, and we were told we had like 15 minutes of her time, and what exactly to bring, the transcript, all that thing, and so we brought this paperwork, and it was like we were meeting a firing squad. This woman looked at the paperwork, like zipped down everything, and this is like the it was also that, what is that form called, Evelyn, that the school gives you that tells you like what their expectations?
You mean the school profile?
Yeah, the school profile.
School profile.
Yep.
So she looked at the school profile over here and looked at the transcript over here, and just like zing, 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 was able to read them and see how Hallie matched up to what the like highest classes she could be taking are.
Yep.
But the speed with which she did this was so, and digested it all,
Right.
was so informative, because it's like, that's what when they're looking at these applications, they're flying through them.
Yep.
And I just, that I'd kind of forgotten that, but that was actually a really eye-opening experience.
And she did, you're right, she did digest that information And she did it that fast because, I love that you called it a firing squad. She did it that fast because she has done that. So, I mean, she does that for 60 to 80 applications a day, every day between January and March.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll tell you, the average amount of time that an admission officer spends on an application is anywhere from 7 to like 13 minutes.
Yeah.
And 13, like at an Amherst, she would get 13 minutes, but at a UVA, where they get tens of thousands of applications, 7 minutes is generous.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Quick decisions made.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Pretty scary. Let's talk about the financial piece of all of this. So what, again, if you were starting all of this over with your invisible third child, what, you're like, thank God, what would you need to know about how the financial aid system works for, middle income, Los Angeles families?
Wow. Well, it's complicated. It's really complicated, and you do need to educate yourself. And quite frankly, I got a little bit, it was a little tougher than I thought. And Rebecca actually ran that part of the family part, and it was, it was not easy. It was a bit of a puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's the FAFSA and the CSS profile.
Yep.
We had to do both because our daughters applied to schools that required both. Those are things that everybody sort of strikes a fear of God in you about because they're so detail oriented, and they ask so many different questions. And I would say that if you're a detail oriented person, I happen to be, it was pretty straightforward. If you're not, you definitely should get some help. Okay. Because it really is like, minute details. You have to go through all your finances. I made a huge mistake that I didn't realize. And, I'm admitting it now in front of my husband. It was my fault, even though I'm the detail gal. But that ended up, not actually making a huge difference, but it was something that we could rectify. But it is something you have to pay close attention to. Yeah. And it was very eye-opening to see that, we didn't qualify for any aid. We qualified for aid with Samantha because she was our second child in college at the same time. Yeah. So we have, 2 tuitions. But that was something that is definitely a lesson learned, is to bring your kids in the loop on that.
Yeah.
Early.
Yep.
Yeah. So they understand, we've always had conversations with them about money, and, they haven't known like our incomes and stuff like that, but they definitely sort of understand where we are financially.
Right.
But they really, we really had to make them aware of how much tuitions cost,
Yep.
what you need to pay besides tuition,
Right.
room and board, books, travel.
Yep.
Like, for example, Sam got into Cornell, and we were very seriously considering that for her. She loved it. But at the end of the day, they give you a one sheet that tells you the total cost of attendance, including all those things that I just mentioned. And, the bottom line was $79,000. And, it's like, we knew it, we knew that was coming, but it's, and the line item for travel for her to get there from California was like, I want to say
$1,500 maybe?
Max.
No, probably not enough, maybe.
I want to say it was $900. Like, so it would be like a round trip ticket.
Yeah.
Or 2.
And I think it was important to bring the kids into that conversation about, hey, this is a huge commitment for mom and dad.
Yep.
And we need you to be involved in this to see what's going on. Yep. And then weighing the different offers. Various schools are offering to, bring kids to their campus because they're an attractive candidate. So that's a big part of it.
Yep. I wanted to stay on this for a minute because you did have these very difficult conversations with her, and you did have them at the right time, because there was a consideration earlier for her to apply early decision to a school that you weren't quite ready to put your flag in. And it's not that, it's a great school, obviously, and Cornell is a great school, but, that early decision is a heck of a commitment, and it would have sort of cut off the amount of time that you had to think about whether or not these schools would be the right choice for her.
Right. And I think the schools know that it's a binding decision, early decision. And so all of a sudden it's like you get in early, you're binding, you have to go. And so they know that. And therefore, you have to have made your financial decisions kind of way early in advance.
That's right. That's right.
So,
but I think it's hard to, and it's hard to explain to a teenager the actual value of that, so the net difference between Berkeley and Cornell is like 40 grand, right? Times 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain to a teenager the actual value, but that's $160,000. That's the delta.
Right.
Yes.
And how did you, it was a difficult conversation. Let's just put it that way.
Right. And even if we did say, Sam, this is your decision, it's your debt. We're not taking on $160,000 in debt. But if you want to, that's your decision, you're 18. But we, she doesn't know what that means.
Right.
Like that, it's impossible to grasp.
Exactly.
So we had to say, as your parents, it is your decision, but we are advising you really strongly against that. And she did get aid from Cornell.
Right.
But one of the things that she got was a work study grant, which was for 20 hours of work a week. And so we had a lot of talk about that too, which is like, a lot of people do this. A lot of people work 20 hours a week, but that is not what we have had in our minds about your college education. So if you do decide you want to do that, we have to really discuss that and discuss what exactly that's going to mean for you and for what you've always had in your mind about the college experience.
Sure. And it sounds very privileged to say it that way, but you have to think about how much time do you have left for classes and, a little bit of socializing if 20 hours a week are taken up. That's a lot of time.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we were, that was a big, we had a deep respect for that Cornell offered us that. And we thought it was a great opportunity, but it certainly is, it changes the math a little bit on that amount of work plus the costs and all of those things. And certainly, Berkeley's a wonderful, fantastic school. So, and the price for California residents was quite good.
But at the same time, she had choices of smaller private schools that were more generous because they are the kind of school that, frankly, needs to be to entice students at Sam's caliber to attend. So she had lots of choices, is the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys just narrowed it down to the 2 that really felt like they were the best.
Yeah.
Right. And originally I thought she would end up at a smaller school. And it kind of surprised that, both Cornell and Berkeley were 2 of the larger schools that she got into, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Some of the smaller schools, which is kind of where I envisioned her, it just didn't, some of the variables didn't work for her, and that's totally fine. She did have choices.
Yeah, but so the challenge for her is going to be to find ways to make Berkeley smaller, which there are ways to do that. And I'm assuming Hallie's done that at Wisconsin, same challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's, believe me, that's the getting that student ratio down is not as easy in the beginning years at these larger schools. The smaller schools really do offer, and I want to speak highly of, I went to a large school, but Rebecca went to a smaller school, and I want to speak really, positively. I'm wishing she'd gotten to go to a smaller school because the student faculty ratio is so low.
Yep. There's a lot to be said for that kind of hands-on. But
that's also knowing your kid and knowing
yeah,
this kid's going to get lost in a 300-person lecture class.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea. for
Yeah.
them to be in that environment.
Yeah, and she won't get lost, but she will thrive if she can find ways, to find her people and, find smaller communities. I mean, I'm thinking
So I
about,
don't mean that she'd get lost, but you need to know your kid
yeah,
when you're, like, wow, is my kid going to be okay at a larger university where that first year is a lot of large lecture classes?
yep.
And maybe your kid's not the kind of kid who's going to thrive in that environment.
Well, sometimes when I work with students from smaller schools, actually like where your kids went, I say, how many students are in your class? How many kids were in her graduating class?
125, I think,
yeah.
130.
25. Okay, so I went to a huge private school that had 240 in my class. And I say to kids, can you imagine your entire senior class? That's how many kids are in your lecture hall. And at Berkeley, that's a small lecture class. At UCLA, that's a small lecture class. And some kids are like, whoa, I can't even imagine having a class with everybody in my class in that same lecture hall.
Right.
She'll do fine. She'll thrive in it. She'll be great.
So
She'll be great. Okay, so here's an interesting point, and again, probably not a lot of senior parents are watching right now, but maybe junior parents who had intended to go visit a whole bunch of colleges over spring break, which all of that got obliterated, and that was obliterated for Sam too. So you guys kind of made this choice in a little bit of vacuum.
yeah, it was really tough. I mean, we had with Hallie, we saw our oldest. We definitely visited a lot of schools beforehand.
Before applying.
Our decision after, and lesson we learned was we felt that it was better to certainly visit some schools to get a good idea, and then visit. For our younger daughter, we would visit fewer schools, less cost, and then go visit after the child had gotten into the school, and make those visits. And so
That didn't work very well.
it didn't work very well. So, we were faced with her getting into some wonderful schools and down to Cornell versus Berkeley. And she had not visited either school and made that decision without ever visiting the school.
Yeah. However,
that we did our road trip.
Yeah, they did a
We
one-day
did
road trip.
crazy road trip up to Berkeley, but that was after she had committed.
oh, it was after she committed.
After she committed.
Got it. Okay.
It was just to to see the campus and actually make it feel a little bit real.
I think that these schools now have such an amazing profile online. You really can get a pretty darn good sense from YouTube. Move-in day at fill in the blank school, and it shows a kid who's moving into their dorm. She got a lot of there's a lot you can learn before you make that road trip. If you're going across the country.
And we've heard and we experienced too with Hallie mostly that that the tour guides make so much of a difference. Oh my gosh. I have so many friends who are like, oh, we thought we were going to love that school, but that tour guide was terrible and it just ruins everything.
Yeah.
Or some people who, gave it a second chance, got a different tour guide and it was great. But there is a lot to be said for that feeling when you get onto campus. Is this the kind of place that would be good for me?
Can I see my place, myself here?
Yeah, so
My people.
visiting as many kinds of campuses, urban, rural, large, small, liberal arts, or trade, tech kind of, really, really important to see all of them because you never know what's going to strike a chord.
Yep. And what might strike a chord with your teenager might not strike a chord with you, and that's hard too.
Right.
Because you are raising human beings who are not you.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we're at the point where they are actually human beings now.
Yeah. Right.
But that's hard, right? When I see your daughters, I see, high school young women, because that's when I was introduced to them. But when you see your daughters, you see,
Right.
cute little girls with pigtails.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other advice for parents? Thoughts that, things people should know, might be surprised about?
Well, I think one thing I'd say is to recognize that it's a really stressful time for kids. Not just coronavirus and everything happening now in the world, but just that process of applying to schools and going through it has gotten to be a lot more stressful than I think it was for our generation. And I think we had to, respect that and know that there's so much going on in their lives plus that. And it certainly made me have, kind of back away from talking about it much, and so there was some distance in where we wouldn't just talk about it much at all. And I think that was probably a good thing, but it is it's challenging for them. And being talkative about it is not easy for them. A lot of kids, I think.
Right. Oh, that's an interesting point. How did you resolve that?
We would have to have special moments where we'd say, we're going to spend 20 minutes right now or tonight after dinner talking about colleges. And
because otherwise it was just like, ugh, please, I can't. It's
I
too
roll.
Did you bring that on them, or did you plan ahead?
We tried to plan ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there were some slamming of doors and some eye rolls, but
and we definitely had that was I would say almost more discipline for us.
Yes.
So that we weren't constantly like, hey, what's going on? That we could sort of save a bunch of questions, but we did have to say, listen, we're saving these questions. We're not peppering you with questions throughout the week, but we're saving them for this upcoming get together.
Perfect.
You really must be patient and answer all these questions and not be disgusted by us.
I love that you tried to fit it into 20 minutes. I always tell people, you guys did it almost pretty much right. I want you to pick one time a week, only one time. And it has to be an hour. Everyone has to feel like they can say anything they want to say. Here's what I've been doing. Here's what I've been researching. Here's what I want to talk about. The parents have to be able to say what they want to say, but you can't spring it on them. They have to feel like they're prepared, because if you don't plan that time in advance, like I think it should be a regular time every week. They're going to feel, like you said, like you're peppering them and like you're just like, carpet bombing them with questions. And that's when the eye rolls and the door slamming happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you have to remind yourself that it's their process, really. Yeah. And I think our generation of parents are deeply involved with our kids in a way that my parents weren't involved.
Yep.
And I think we have to remember that as parents, obviously we're involved in that process, but we can't invest as much in getting my daughter to go to UVA because I went there. You got to step away from that a little bit and be like, it'd be great if you went there, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think it took me a while to let that go a little bit and say, like, hey, you got to be at a place that's right for you.
Yeah, good.
A place that I think you'd like.
Yeah, so all of you out there who have been dressing your children in UCLA, cheerleader uniforms since they were 4,
exactly.
Throw those away.
We do have a picture of Ellie in a UVA cheerleader. Not kidding.
True.
From when she was like 3.
I went there.
Go Cavs. You loved your experience, and you loved your experience, and so you want them to have. You don't want them to have your experience. You want them to have their experience.
Yeah.
That is the goal.
Very much.
So perfect. We couldn't have ended in a better place. But let me just say thank you again. Thank you, of course, for trusting me with your girls. They were fabulous. I love where both of them ended up, and I can't wait to see who they are and what they do in the world. And you guys did a great job through the whole process. I know it was stressful.
Thank you. Thank you. We're here to say that we live to tell the tale. Gonna get through it. Good luck.
Gonna get through it. And thank you again for coming and talking with me today. And for those of you who are still here or watching on the playback, again, we're doing this every Thursday through July, I think like 23rd. Next week, Melissa Falk from Muhlenberg College, Dean of Admission and Financial Aid, on the big topic on everyone's mind, what is changing in college admissions. So we will see you next Thursday. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.